All right, so let me know when you've started recording and I'll introduce myself and we can get going.
Oh, we good. Started recording.
Okay, good. All right, well, hello to everybody, all of you muted and otherwise. My name is Eric Breckner. I am the career coach and founder for Ally for Onlys. That's supposed to be a plural. Oops. See, edit it real time here. Get that right. Allies for Onlys in Tech, which is career coaching for folks who are underrepresented and working in tech. Before, just recently, as you may already know, I was working for Microsoft, and Yash was my intern this past summer. Before Microsoft, I've been working for Microsoft for 25 years. Before Microsoft, I worked for Boeing in Silicon Graphics, a startup called GraphTech that did CAD, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Bank Leumi, as well as a whole bunch of university work. I got my PhD from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI for short. So I've been, basically I've been working professionally as a software developer since I was 16 years old, believe it or not. And in all that time, I've learned a lot about what it's like to work on real world software projects. And so when Yash asked me as an intern favor to give a talk at his university, I said I'd be happy to. And we picked this topic. Sounds great to me. So I'll talk to you about what it's like just to work on real world software projects in general, and then also the impact the pandemic's been having on this experience. If you have any questions, please just type them into chat. As you can see, I have the chat window up, and I'll answer your question when I get to a nice little stopping point and can interject an answer to your question. All righty, so with that, and I'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions. Yash, I assume we've got an hour. Is that right?
Yep, you have.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about software projects. I'm going to need to. I can already see. I need to shift this. Okay. So, what is it about real-world software projects versus the kind of software projects you've probably been involved with in the past? So on the left, I've got college and internship type projects. And on the right, I have what I consider to be kind of real world professional software projects. So with college and internships, even an internship at a place like Microsoft, like Yash just experienced, you have fixed requirements and you've got a date. For an internship, obviously, that's the end of your internship. For college projects, of course, there's a due date. Those kinds of things, that doesn't happen in real world projects. In real world projects, there's wildly variable requirements. Even the date is often soft. Sometimes you do have a hard date, like Christmas. Christmas tends not to slip. So you definitely need to hit that date. But usually, even for projects like when I was working on Xbox, and we had to ship a bunch of stuff in time for Christmas, even then, you don't want to set your due date for Christmas. You want to set it for like early November. And then that date will move. And there was one year we moved it all the way out to December 15th before we actually shipped, even though it was originally set for something like November 7th. So the dates move around, the requirements move around. It makes for a very different dynamic. Another thing about college and internship projects is that it tends to be new code. Yeah, sometimes you build upon an existing library, right? It's given to you by your TA or by the professor, and you're kind of enhancing an existing project. But by and large, you're writing new code. In real world professional software, you're almost never writing new code. You're almost always building on top of existing legacy code. Obviously, there's some startups where that's not the case, although that's becoming quite rare because of the prevalence of open software. which is now like built into everything, as I'm sure you're well aware. Any of you who've worked on any kind of projects are almost certainly used open software. We use that at Microsoft as well, and pretty much every other company these days. So even in those cases where you're doing a startup, you're building on top of existing code and substantial existing code. You just don't see new code much at all. And building on top of existing code is wrought with all kinds of interesting issues. Obviously, there's just pure style. You know, most teams don't clash their coding style with what the existing software is. You tend to, you know, when in Rome, pretty much follow the same style patterns as the existing code, and you know, that's just what you kind of have to fit into. In addition to that, obviously, there's all kinds of bugs that may exist in that old code that you need to actually, in many cases, maintain, not fix, but maintain in the new code, because if you break the existing bugs, what that's called is backward incompatibility, because people will have coded their stuff assuming those bugs exist. I know that sounds weird and counterintuitive, but you can imagine, this is real cases in Excel, just for as an example, where there are bugs in some functions in Excel, and they're known bugs, but they couldn't fix the bugs because people had written spreadsheets that assumed that those bugs existed. And if those bugs were fixed, those spreadsheets would break. And those spreadsheets were things like for running businesses. So we couldn't fix those bugs. You'll notice in Excel, there are a number of functions that do exactly the same thing. And they'll say something in the documentation like, this is the new function to use instead of this old one. Please use the new one. The old one's there for compatibility. What's really going on underneath the covers is the old one was buggy. The new one isn't, but they couldn't change the old one. So craziness. Another thing, college and internships, generally speaking, your dependencies are stable. If you're given a library, or if you're building on top of, you know, something like .NET or React or God knows what, you know, those dependencies by and large are stable. When you're working in real world professional software, some of your dependencies, of course, are stable. React is just as stable as ever. .NET is as stable as ever. But you're probably working on a project that involves multiple different teams, and you're depending upon those other teams. And what they're working on, it's not stable at all. They're working on it at the same time as you. You may have gotten an agreement between your two different teams about when certain functionality needs to be there, what the APIs are and how they're supposed to work. But I'm guessing many of you have worked with other human beings. They are not terribly reliable. They can't predict the future well, and they write buggy code. So good luck with that. It's a real problem. You know, the partner development is just, it's just a nightmare, honestly. That said, it's how you do software and keep it cutting edge. If you're slow to the game, you're going to be left behind. So it's a necessary evil. In college and internships, you've got one customer. Typically, it's the professor or the grader or your TA, something like that. You've got one customer. Even in internships, generally speaking, for intern projects, there's a focus customer. They're typically the intern's manager or someone like that, and they're evaluating how well you did. In the real world, of course, you've got millions of customers, hopefully. If not, you're not getting paid well. So you have millions of customers, and they're all over the map in terms of what they want. You know, it's much more difficult to make them all happy because they're not of a single mind. College and internships, you do your project, you're done. You can move on, right? You submit that thing, whew, time to go on, you know, spring break or whatever, right? I guess these days you don't go anywhere, but still, you're done. For real world software, oh no. When you finish, that's the beginning. I imagine you've heard this before, if you've heard any talks about software development, but we're all about continuous delivery and DevOps these days. And writing the code and deploying it for the first time It's just the beginning of the life of that software. You're maintaining it, fixing issues, hot fixes, obviously enhancing it, refactoring it. That code is going to have a long life. Now, if you come back 10 years later, every line that you wrote to begin with may no longer exist, but the functionality may still exist. It's just been refactored and changed around so many times. But it's just beginning life, whereas college and internship projects, you know, that's it, they're gone. In college and internship, if you screw up, yeah, your grade might be on the line. Or maybe even an internship, a job offer might be on the line. That's a bit disconcerting. I get it. It's not the same thing as losing your home, your car, your ability to feed yourself, getting on unemployment. There's a lot more on the line with real world software projects. And that's a real deal. This is why a lot of people don't go back to grad school. You know, they think, you know, I was even talking to Yash about this. You know, you have these great notions, right? That you're gonna work for a while, you know, kind of establish yourself, get some experience, and then you'll go back for your master's, your PhD, or whatever. And some people do that, but it's really hard to do because if you stop working, you can't pay for your car and your house and your food and all that. So, you know, and you're used to those luxuries at that point. Perhaps you have a family, you know, you're married or you have kids or whatever it is, you know, you're used to a certain, you know, level of living. And, you know, once you're working on real projects and you have a real job, it's really hard to give that stuff up. So you end up working, you know, working on grad school in the evenings or on weekends or something like that. It's a lot harder to do. So it's just a very different dynamic. And if you're managing people, holy cow, it's one thing to be kind of the leader of your group project, and that's fun, and you're working with your peers and they're a pain in the butt, but no problem. You can herd cats and get things kind of working, and a few of you will do most of the work. I'm sure you know the deal. When you're working on a real project, you know, it's a different ballgame because, you know, giving someone a lot of crap about how they did their work and not following through, you're talking about their livelihood, you know, so there's just a lot on the line, which brings me to that last point that does really align between college and internship projects and real world projects, and that is your teammates are completely unreliable. That does not change. So to the extent that you enjoy the fact that your teammates are unreliable, thank goodness you get to keep that. Anyway, that's my summary of real world software projects. Feel free, again, if you have any questions about that, to put it into the chat window. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what's important for real world software projects. And I'm just going to cover a few things that that you're not going to experience as much. This is really oriented toward people who are just starting out. So they're coming in from college. Maybe they got a master's or even a PhD. Maybe they just come in with a bachelor's or just came out of high school. You know, what is it that they're going to be experiencing that they really need to build up their skills in order to be successful on real world software projects as opposed to the ones you get in college or internships? First things first, planning. Planning is going to be different. Now, they don't let people straight out of high school do all the major planning for a big project like Windows or Xbox or Office or something. Excuse me. So sure, right? You're not going to have to deal with that. But you will be asked, hey, if I asked you to code this thing, you know, this new feature, this new experience, how long would it take? Which do you think of these three things is most important? Do you have any ideas for what we should work on next? You will be asked questions like that. And you need to be prepared to answer them. So you should have a good idea. What bugs would you fix? What new things do you think are the most important to add? Are there innovations that you could add to what you have that you might want to list? You want to be thinking that way because that's going to determine what you work on next, or at least help determine it. So you need to be thinking about those things. You need to be able to say how long something's going to take. When you come up with an answer, you will be wrong. It will take much longer than that. So you need to get good at involving others in making those estimates. So when you have a guess at how long it should be, you should ask a couple of your friends. Maybe you guys do planning poker together. That would be ideal. But even if you don't, and if you don't know what planning poker is, you can look it up. It's on Wikipedia. But you can ask a few others how long they think it would take, and then believe them because they're right. And take the average or just believe what they think, because more experienced people will do a better estimate than you will. Then once you have an idea of how long something's going to take, what's more important than another, you've given your ideas about what to work on next, right? That's about as much responsibility as you're going to be given as a new engineer. Once you've done that, you're going to have to track your work. Now you kind of have to do that for regular projects, internships, and so on, but it's a whole different animal when you're working on a team, everyone's counting on each other, and you get really embarrassed about the fact that you've been stuck and didn't get, got maybe a third or a tenth as far along as you thought you would by this point. And it's really awkward to admit to that sort of thing. So nonetheless, it's way better to be upfront about that stuff than it is to lie or hide it. Way better. And you think, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to seem like a loser. I'm the new person. I'm really smart. I don't want people to think I'm stupid, right? There's all kinds of concerns that people have about being really transparent about where they're at. Get over it. Get over it. Because the last thing you want to be is unreliable. All the rest of it, people are used to that from new folks. New folks get stuck. That's just something they do. Happens to old folks too. Everybody gets stuck. People misestimate. Aspects take longer than you think. That's normal. Lying about it, that's a problem. And the reason why it's a problem is that if something's supposed to take you, say, 4 days, and you're starting to work on it, and it's been a day, and you finished maybe a tenth of it, so now it's looking like it's going to take 10 days. Well, if you tell everyone, it's fine, I'll get it done, and you're thinking to yourself, I'll just work hard at night, and I'll do all this extra work and all that sort of thing, right? I'll just try harder, all that. Then the 4 days come up, or 3.5 days come up, and people think that you're done, and you've got 6 days left. So finally you admit, yeah, I'm having problems with it. And then like, damn, if you told me that you were having problems 3 days ago, we could have gotten you help. We could have gotten you unblocked. We could have put more people on it. We could have changed the scope of it so it wasn't that complicated. We could have cut the feature because we didn't care that much. That's why we put you on it, because it wasn't that big a deal. And we thought, if it doesn't work out, it's no big deal, right? We could have done all those things and had those 3 days back. And you can imagine people do this for 2-week projects or even 1-month projects, and it's even worse. You don't get those days back. Now it's day 4, or it's day 10, or it's day 30, right? And you don't get those days back, and everyone will hate you. Everyone will hate you. So don't do that. Be upfront, be clear, talk about where you're really at, and follow. Now, my favorite rule, I think I told Josh about this early, 20 minutes. Stay stuck for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, ask for help. 20 minutes is long enough to search Stack Overflow, search the documents, try out a few things, whatever. And then once you've spent that time and you're still stuck, ask someone else for help. I've actually done the calculations. Financially speaking to the company, it's more, the break-even point is about 20 minutes of you being stuck before you bring in someone else. So don't take more than 20 minutes. Don't stay stuck. It's crazy. Which brings me to being a good teammate and a good partner. Software is a team sport. I realize it's not necessarily reinforced in college because everyone's getting their own individual grades. Obviously, you do get team grades from time to time, but everyone's kind of on their own. In real life, working on real software projects, it's always a team effort, always. And as a result, it's way more important for you to be a good teammate than it is for you to be some godlike engineer, okay? There are godlike engineers, they do exist. They're amazing, they're great. The ones who aren't good teammates suck and get on bad projects and often end up getting fired or at least wishing they had been better human beings. You want to be a good teammate. Your folks are they're gonna help you after those 20 minutes. They're gonna cover for you, you're gonna cover for them, you're gonna solve problems together, you're gonna enjoy your time together, which makes the job much less like a job and much more fun. You're just going to have a much better experience. So be a good teammate, cover for each other, answer questions, be nice, talk about things that people are interested in, show up for lunches, even if they're virtual lunches these days. Just be a good teammate and be a good partner. What that means is if some other team is depending on you or you're depending on them, be upfront. If you're running late, let them know you're running late. Don't keep it a secret, just like with the tracking. Just don't keep it a secret. If they're running late, be understanding. You could be running late, be understanding. Work with them. Try and just be a decent human being. Life's too short. And all of software is an intellectual exercise. So it's all about people. It's all about relationships. It's all about working well together. And if there's any skills that you can pick up and bring with you when you come into a real job somewhere, is being a good teammate, being a good partner, and working well with others makes a huge, huge difference. Whew. So, oh my goodness, I went through the details already. Let me make sure I forgot that I had broken them out. So when it comes to planning, just some extra details that I might not have mentioned. One is that executives tend to provide the top priorities, okay? So they're gonna say what you need to focus on and why. That's what you're gonna get from upper management when they send that out. Managers will map those priorities to your particular product or service that you're doing, and they're going to provide a list of improvements, and then you fill in the gaps, just like I was talking about. What's missing, what's possible, what's needed. That's your kind of job, along with estimates for those things. So that's kind of how planning works. It's both top down and bottom up, as you can see from this. You're not going to be able to convince these executives to work on something that they're not interested in, but you can incorporate in some of those pieces into the list that your manager kind of makes up for all the product improvements you're going to do over the next sprint or the next big release. For tracking, something to be aware of that I didn't mention earlier is that every task ends up mapping to some kind of org priority. This is what that looks like for Azure, where Yash and I were most recently working. We have these top level objectives, and we've got key results, then we've got local key results. These are actually entities, by the way, in Azure DevOps, the tool that we were using, Azure Boards, we were using to track work. Then epics, then features, and then tasks. Sometimes there weren't features. Sometimes I went straight from epics to tasks. And those are all tracked on a board. During the pandemic, those are digital boards. Like I said, we use Azure Boards for that, but lots of people use Jira, or they're using what's ever built into GitHub. There's lots of tools for this. Personally, I prefer physical boards, but during the pandemic, obviously, we've got to go digital. One of the other things that happens during tracking, where you could either be upfront about things or you could keep it hidden, is your daily stand-ups. So just about, teams just about everywhere these days do daily stand-ups, either as part of Scrum or Kanban, or even Waterfall, they'll do daily stand-ups. The 3 questions that you're typically answering in a stand-up, this is straight from Scrum, is what did you do, what are you doing next, and if there are any blockers. For Kanban, you would indicate what you've done and what you're doing next by moving the little stickies on the board, or the digital board, moving those little icons around. For the blockers, obviously you want to talk about anything that's holding you up. So if you still didn't ask for help, this is the time to ask for big help. And then finally, the last thing with tracking that involves you is there's these meetings, there's review meetings. So twice a week, typically teams get together and talk about how things have gone. Quarterly, the entire group gets together to talk about how things have gone. And then semi-annually, typically the org gets together and talks about how things have gone. That's certainly the cadence at Microsoft. I've also seen that same cadence at other companies like Facebook and Google and Apple, all that. Now, as a frontline engineer, straight out of college, you're probably only going to be involved in that first one, the biweekly team meeting, and then you'll be like attending the group and the org meetings, and there'll be a report out from high up. But all this stuff will be reflecting the work that you actually do. So that's what tracking looks like for a real project. And then finally, being a good teammate and partner, I mentioned the 20-minute rule. You got to attend your stand-up. You typically have one-on-ones with your manager. As Josh can tell you, those can be really fun and interesting. Your manager should be advocating for you. If they're not, you should find yourself another manager. It turns out software engineers are very much in demand. So you should just get a better team if you're not getting really good coaching support from your manager. You should always undercommit and over-deliver. I mentioned that to you about estimates and everything like that. Don't promise something to someone and show up empty. It's just rude. Only promise what you're sure you can do, and then try and do more than that. No one minds getting more. People do kind of mind getting less. You want to iterate. This is that thing about getting stuck after 20 minutes. You want to iterate. You want to do some work, deliver some value, some quality and value, and then do some more work. That's just how you want to operate all the time. If everyone, I'll get to that in a sec. If you just sit around and you're like, I'm going to spend 2 months on this, it's going to be perfect. It's not. It's going to suck. The way that software development is all about knowledge discovery. And the only way you get knowledge discovery is by trying something out and getting some feedback on it. Put it in front of some people, even if they're the people just down the hall from you, your roommate, whatever, right? Put it in front of some people, get some feedback, make it better. Get it closer, closer, closer. You want to iterate. You got to win as a team. I've mentioned this before. It's a team sport. That's what real software development is. Totally a team sport. One person, the whole thing in the movies where it's one developer who's a super genius and comes up, that's BS. That's not how the world works. It's always teamwork. Even for those hyper brilliant, rare commodities, they work on teams. You got to love your customers and partners, as difficult as they are. And I'll get to Yasha's question in a second. As difficult as they are, all that, you've got to love the people that you're working for. And that's your customers, and that's the teams that are depending on you, okay? You gotta love them. Now, I'm not saying you love them. Obviously, you don't love them romantically. That's awkward. You love them kind of like family, where they're difficult, they want ridiculous things. They don't understand what you're talking about. They screw up your life, and yet you love them. You love them because where are you without them, right? Customers and partners, you don't have your job if they're not around. So you gotta love them, warts and all, and take care of them as best you can. That's just the way to think about it. Anything else is just frustrating and won't produce great work that's valuable, that's impactful. And then the last thing to mention here about being a good teammate and partner is to respond honorably to mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, for crying out loud. No one's perfect. So if you make a mistake, that's expected. What you can screw up is how you respond, by denying you made the mistake, by blaming it on someone else, by taking forever to take care of it, by hiding it, something like that. Those are terrible things. What you want to do is immediately own up to your mistake, try and make it right, and not by yourself. Again, it's a team sport. Own up the mistake and then rally with your team to try and make it right as soon as you can, the way that the person who was harmed is, most appreciates it. That's responding honorably to a mistake. And nothing is more valuable as a teammate or partner than taking care of the mistakes that inevitably happen. That's just a great way to be. So I think that's it. I think I'm open to questions. I got one here from Yash. What does good manager coaching look like? First of all, your manager should be interested in you, okay? And what matters to you, what questions you have, what your goals are. What do you want to be when you grow up and become a famous, globe-trotting genius? What does that look like for you? And then your manager should be coaching you up on how to get there. And you're not going to get there overnight. It'll be a step-by-step process. Have to get promoted to this, that, and the other thing. Have to gain certain experiences, all that sort of thing. So your manager should be listening to you and what you care about and watching how you work, watching the things that you're good at, the things that you're a little weak on, and then helping you get to your goals by focusing on your strengths and taking full advantage of what you're great at, and then mitigating the things that you're not as good at so that they don't block you from achieving your goals. But yeah, just focused on you and what's important to you.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions? And at this point, you don't have to use the chat. You can also just speak up. Okay, here we got another one. How do you prevent looking bad to your managers and still seek help? You know what looks really good? Asking for help when you really need it. So to answer Hayward's question here, how do you do it in a way that you don't look like an idiot? So remember I said you spend in that 20 minutes and you're actually searching, Stack Overflow, or you're searching Wikipedia, you're just searching the internet in general, you're going on GitHub, whatever you're doing to try and figure out, hey, how do I unblock myself? You're trying a bunch of different things, right? 20 minutes doesn't sound like very long, but in fact, you can get a lot done in those 20 minutes. What you do to prevent looking bad when you're seeking help is when you write to your teammates, you send that email or whatever, or you're just on Teams, or you're on, who knows what, Zoom, something. Include what you did, what you already tried. List out those things. So I went to Stack Overflow, here's that link. They had this answer, it didn't work. I tried going to this documentation, it didn't cover this thing. I also tried this and this. I have no idea what to do. Can someone help me get me unblocked, right? So you spend like 5 minutes writing that, now you're at 25 minutes. You spend 5 minutes writing that email. When you send that out, now everyone thinks, Edward, he actually did the legwork here. He tried all these obvious things. They didn't work. Those are the first things I was going to suggest. He saved me some time. Now he needs someone smart to answer his question who actually has experience. That's me. I'm a smart person. I can be a genius to Hayward here. I can help him out. Now I feel like Hayward's working hard. Hayward's being thoughtful. Hayward's actually put in the legwork. He needs assistance like everybody does. I'm here for Hayward. I feel smart because Hayward made me look smart because he assumed that I already knew about all the obvious stuff. And I do. I can provide real expertise. That's how you end up looking good while still getting yourself unblocked. Does that answer your question, Hayward? Hayward's trying to find you mute. Fantastic. Okay, Henry is asking, how do you deal with teammates and or managers that aren't cooperative and collaborative? Gee, that never happens, Henry. So of course that happens all the time. Lead, I tell people this all the time, lead with empathy, okay? They're being uncooperative and uncollaborative for a reason, okay? There aren't that many truly horrible people in the world. I know there are plenty of people who've done horrible things. I get it. There's some evil in the world. I'm not denying that. It's just most of the people that you're going to work with throughout your career, I can think of, God, my 25 years at Microsoft, I can think of only one person who is truly a horrible person in that entire time. Thousands of people that I dealt with. Most people are decent people. So there's a reason why they're being uncooperative or uncollaborative. What is it? And the way you find out that reason is by meeting them where they are. tell me more. So you're looking for some assistance or they're screwing up or something like that. Hey, I'm struggling a little bit with you on this thing. Tell me more about where you're at. If you need them to prioritize something and they're not prioritizing it, hey, this thing is important to me. I noticed that you weren't able to get to it. What's going on? Just be curious. Not accusatorial. Why the heck are you so late? Not like that. Just, hey, what's going on? I noticed you were a little late with this. What's happening? Tell me more about what's going here. Be curious. Be genuine about that. Show real empathy for where they're at. My boss changed priorities on me. Oh God, I hate when that happens. Yeah, I was supposed to work on this. I actually cared about doing that for you, but then we had these change of priorities and it's so screwed up and that's not how I would want it to work, right? You go back and forth, you talk back and forth. When you lead with that empathy and really try and understand why are their priorities the way they are? Why are they being uncooperative? Why can't they work with you? Now you can say, well, how about if we make this compromise? And they're like, oh, okay, maybe, sure, I could do that. Or you realize it's just not going to work. Now you can save yourself a lot of trouble, right? So, just trying to understand, trusting that people are actually decent folks, because almost everybody is. Okay, maybe you don't want to be best friends with everybody, but everyone's pretty decent. Just try and understand them, where they're at, and then try and work things out. And if you do that, they're going to be much more understanding of you. And honestly, they're going to like you a little bit more and they're going to want to do something for you because you're not being unreasonable. You're being a decent person. So that tends to do the trick in almost every instance. And sure, you don't always get what you want. Fair enough, right? You're going to have to compromise a little bit because, their hands are tied or whatever. You learn what their constraints are. But, things tend to work out. Does that help you out, Henry? I'm going to assume so. Yeah. Okay, what happens if you keep getting stuck on problems? What you try and do is get stuck on new problems. So you will keep getting stuck on problems. It's not a what if. It just happens. You will. You'll constantly be getting stuck. You try and get stuck on new things each time. So each time you get stuck, you ask that question, right? You do your 20 minutes. You ask the question, you get the help you need. Hopefully you're not just getting the answer, but you're learning on how they got that answer. Where did they find that out? What was the resource that they used? What's the philosophy? All that sort of thing. So that you won't get stuck on that same problem. You'll get stuck on a new problem. And people are happy to help you with new problems. They get frustrated with helping you with old problems. So just try and learn each time, not have exactly the same problem again. If you do, and you just don't recognize that it's the same problem, then learn how to recognize that it's the same problem, right? But each time, try and make it a bit different. And then people are way more understanding. Hopefully it helps Demetrius. And I didn't butcher your name. Patrick says, have you been on projects or completed some part of a project that got completely scrapped at the end? Absolutely. We used to have these things called ship parties where we'd ship software. This is back when it was packaged product, right? We don't do that as much anymore because everything's a service these days, but we used to have these ship parties. We actually had a sink it party. Instead of shipping it, we sunk it. And we had a dunk tank the executive sat in, and we got the dunkum part of the sink party. It's unfortunate that happens, but hey, it's a business, and sometimes people get laid off. That has nothing to do with those people. The business has changed. It's terrible. That's like the worst thing that can happen. But sometimes projects just get cut and you have to switch on to something else. Sometimes you get reorged in the middle of something and you have to switch gears. It's real life. The better that you can roll with it, not get too upset, not get too attached to anything. This is yet another reason to iterate, right? Finish something, move on to the next thing, work on it in pieces. The more you can do that, the more you can be finished with things. And even if it gets cut, you don't have work left undone. You just haven't finished every aspect of it. So it's not so bad. Okay, got a few more questions here. If you had to choose one other field of study to do alongside comp sci science degree, what would you choose and why? That one's easy for me. My PhD is in mathematics, so of course I choose mathematics. I love math. But you know, now that I've been out in the world and all that, I would totally choose psychology, particularly behavioral psychology, but psychology in general I think is fascinating. And boy, behavioral economics is just so cool. I love behavioral economics. It kind of has business stuff in it. It's got economic stuff in it. It's got psychology, behavioral psychology in it. That stuff's really cool. I love behavioral economics. So I think I would choose those things. And the reason why is that, you know, honestly, once you do coding for long enough, and for me, it was probably about 15 years in, you can code anything. Sure, you may not be able to come up with this brand new algorithm or where, but you know, pretty much anything anyone asks you to code, you can do it, because the computer does what you say. At that point, I became more of a manager. I focused more on my management skills, and because people are way more complicated than computers. You tell a computer to do something, it does it, whether you meant it or not. You tell a person to do something, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? People are way more complicated and interesting, and that's kind of when I got into psychology. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Another question here from Anita. Where do you think the longer term opportunities are in computer science? Example, coding versus software architecture or something else. Anita, I have advice for you. Learn how to learn fast. What's happening in computers these days, and computer science in general, the software market, is that things are changing unbelievably fast. It's not like they were changing slowly when I first started out, but oh my God, the pace of innovation these days is ridiculous. And it used to be you could kind of make a career out of becoming like the expert in .NET, or the expert in SQL, or the expert in the Windows kernel, or something like that. And you can make a whole career out of being expert at that thing, or the expert at React, right? Or something like that. These days, those technologies are changing so freaking fast that by the time you become expert in them, people have moved on. It's not React anymore. Now it's the latest, God knows what, UI technology or JavaScript, you know, package, or who knows, right? Oh, it's all about, you know, operating systems. No, it's all about VMs. No, it's all about containers. No, it's all about, you know, serverless. God, it's changing so fast. So if you're going to learn how to do anything, Anita, I would recommend you learn how to pick up a technology quick, okay? Don't look to be super duper expert. Look to be competent fast. You get that skill down, you are employable for a lifetime. Because even as things change, you're going to be able to keep up to speed with it. Anything that you need to do, you can jump right on it. And so I would just get really good at picking up new technologies quickly. Next one from Marv. In your experience, how significant is a minor in addition to a comp sci degree? Doesn't matter at all, Marv. I hope you enjoy your minor and that it was fun learning it and you picked up some interesting stuff, and that's about as much as you're going to get out of it. That said, I minored in computer science and that worked out for me, so hey. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, here we got one from Caleb. What should you do when you get some requests from upper management that you think might not be the best move for your team or department to focus on? Great question. And what about graduate degrees? Okay, I'll get to that too. So, okay, so what do you do when your upper management is clueless? Okay, so that's called like a Tuesday. That happens all the time. Couple different things. One, keep in mind that they're going to be the ones who evaluate you. And so when push comes to shove, you got to do what you're asked to do. Okay. The sooner you can just accept that fact, the better off you're going to be. Okay. That said, you owe it to the company. You owe it to your customers. You owe it to your partners who you love. Okay. To push back a little bit and say, ask questions. Just ask questions, and not be like annoying questions like, why would we do that stupid thing? No, you don't want to say that to your manager or your manager's manager, whoever, okay? But you do want to ask questions of, you know, given that we're moving in this direction and these technologies are happening, why would we go in this direction? What's the thinking? What's the thinking there? Could you help me with some of the strategy? And ask because you're curious, not because you're being judgmental, but you're curious. Again, leading with empathy, right? Just what's the thinking here? And they may say, that's a good point, actually. Let me think about that. Most of the time, what they'll say is, yeah, we thought about that. That's a great question. But here's these little intricacies here that you're not aware of that are leading us to that decision. That's the much more common thing. And now you become more enlightened and you're clear about what you should do and why you should do it, and you're going to do a better job. So being curious like that, and again, leading with empathy, that's going to get you a lot more information and you're going to go far. You keep asking questions like that, you keep thinking strategically, you're going to get to the higher levels of that company or wherever you happen to work. So great question there. What about graduate degrees? You only need a graduate degree in an area where it's a real profession. So for example, you got computer science. Computer science, it's a general tech. You only need a bachelor's, and honestly, you don't even need a bachelor's, but college is awesome, so of course you should get a bachelor's. But that's a general tech. You don't need a master's for that. However, let's say you want to go into cybersecurity. Okay, that's a whole profession, right? That one you need a master's for, okay? It's the same thing like my younger son, he's not that interested in becoming a software developer. He was interested in meteorology, does a lot of work with computers, of course, but it's meteorology. There, you can't get a decent job in meteorology without having a master's, just like you can't get a decent job in cybersecurity without a master's, okay? So that's when it's useful. But if it's just a matter of, hey, I could get a master's, why join the real world just yet? You might as well get your job. Get that car, get that nice house, earn a living. How many languages would you say or know I've worked with? God, I used to be able to count, and now I couldn't even tell you. It's got to be well over 10. I don't even know. I know like 5 different assemblers, let alone languages. And that's like old, unfortunately. I'm an old person. What do you think about 4+1 master's degrees? I think that's 1 year that you could have been working and earning money. Sorry, that was a little blunt. Honestly, if you want to get a master's because you're really interested in something, I got a PhD. I don't use mathematics in my regular job. I got a PhD because I love math and I just wanted to stay and get a PhD in math because math is freaking cool. So, if you wanna get your master's degree because you're just super interested in that, God bless, go do it. It's great. College is awesome. Okay. But if you're getting a master's because you're going to think you're going to earn more money, you won't. If you think you're going to be able to get a job that you couldn't have gotten otherwise, that's not true. Okay. Unless, again, it's in a professional field like cybersecurity, something like that, where you really need the master's. But aside from that, if it's just pure computer science or, whatever, physics or something, yeah, it's not going to make a difference. So do it because you love it, not because you think you need it. And of course, if you can't find a job, obviously things are rough right now with the pandemic and all that. If you can't get a job right away, you might as well get a master's. The master's will be worth a good year of professional experience in terms of your starting salary. So if you're having trouble finding the job that you want, staying and getting a master's will give you a leg up and get you a little more money. But it's not necessary because you could have just taken the job right then, assuming you could get a job. You could take the job right then, work for a year, you'll have the increase in salary that way, and you'll have more experience. You're better off. So again, just get the master's if you really want it. Or if it's in a specific professional field that requires a master's. Any other questions?
I would just like to point as an aside regarding the masters. If you are, however, international students, any masters will, get you a leg up in the H-1B quota. I don't know, that system keeps changing like every 2 years since 2016. I don't know what's gonna happen next year, but yeah, like if the system remains the same, I do know that getting a master's like increases your chances of H-1B. But a lot of companies, as at least I know of Microsoft, which they have a special program which you can, like you have to do you can do a 12-month rotation at some other country like office, and then you try to apply again. But that's only for a very fringe cases for international students.
Yep. That's a great point, Yash. I wasn't thinking about the visa side of things. I was thinking purely about whether or not it helps you, get a particular job. So thanks for adding that in. Any other questions? We're just about out of time, but any other questions?
So I'll have a final one. What's your favorite memory from Microsoft?
My favorite memory from Microsoft. Wow. Yeah, like I said, I was there for over 25 years. Oh, my goodness. I guess I would say two things really stand out. One is something that happened the very first summer I was there, and that was the Windows 95 launch. It was the last launch at the company where the entire company got involved, even if you weren't working on Windows 95. And that was just so freaking fun. And the launch party, the launch event was actually on campus on the softball fields. So that was just so memorable and fun and thrilling. I remember it really, really fondly. That was just a cool time, and we were all together as one company because the company was relatively small back then. So that was so cool. The other memory, my younger son is autistic. He's the one who's into meteorology, getting his master's in meteorology. But anyway, he has autism, and whatever it was, 22, 3 years ago, when he was first diagnosed, there was almost nothing for this. There was no insurance coverage. There was no treatment. There was no nothing. And that was a very difficult time for my wife and I. He was just 2 years old when he was diagnosed, which is very early back then. And a bunch of parents, just 10 parents at Microsoft, all with kids with autism. We all kind of knew each other because, kind of birds of a feather, you kind of find each other. And we petitioned the company to cover treatment for autism. And no company had ever done it before. But we petitioned the company to do it. And we gave lots of good reasons why and talked about really effective treatments to help kids be able to be functioning, members of society, even with the autism. This is, again, a very long time ago when people used to be institutionalized for autism. And the company did it. It took a few years because no one had ever done it before, so it was really hard. But the company did it. And I think that's most proud and it made me cry that day. That was an amazing, amazing day. So I think that's the most memorable time is when the company came through and actually supported my son and my family that way. It was the first company in the United States, and I think worldwide, big company to provide autism treatment. So that was an amazing thing. So
Wow.
I think that would be it, Yash.
That's beautiful, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us today. We had a lovely time. If you can just send me the slides over, I can send it over to people who attendees. And
Absolutely.
and that we do have one last question if you want to take that.
Yeah. What steps should we take to increase our chances of getting an interview and maybe even a job with our dream company? Look for them to come on campus. That's the easiest thing to do, honestly. Hopefully you have, companies coming to your campus. That's your easiest way in by far, especially if you're a college student. So just interview with as many of those as you can. Use that opportunity to learn as much about them as they learn about you, and it's a numbers game. The more places that you apply to, the better off you are. Obviously, internships help a huge amount, as Yash can tell you. So I'm sure you already know that. So just be yourself at interviews. You want the company to hire you, not someone else, not someone better than you or worse than you. So just be yourself when you interview, and show people what you're really like, and you'll have a good chance of getting the job.
Perfect.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time. I hope you have a great afternoon, and yeah, take care.
I'll talk to you later, Eric.
Okay,
All right. Bye.
see ya.
if you guys want to sign the attendance form real quick, I'll just post that in the chat. That's also the sign up for the gift card raffle. So if you want some money, then feel free to sign that. Other than that, I think pretty much all set, right?
Yep, I think we're good.
Okay, sweet. If you haven't joined our Discord server somehow, I don't know how else you would have found this, honestly, but if you haven't, yeah, I'll just get the link for that too. Somewhere around here.
With the link for the Discord?
Yep, there we go.
We should have added that link to the form.
Yeah, probably. All right, well, thanks everybody.
Alright, that sounds good then. Let's meet on Discord.
All right, you want to stop recording the